Tisha Lewis, and this is The Good Word. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. And for The Good Word fam returning, welcome back to your dose of faith, inspiration, and The Good Word. To my right, Grammy-nominated singer and songwriter and also leader of the Youthful Praise Choir and pastor of the Gathering Place right here in the DMV, JJ Hairston. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Tisha. I'm so honored.
You know, it's so exciting to have you here in studio.
Yes.
You've been on The Good Word before, but it was during the pandemic times,
right.
and you were virtual.
Right.
Nothing like being in person.
Nothing. This is a whole thing. Tisha's doing an awesome job here. I'm so honored to be with you.
Thank you so much. Welcome back. Let's get started and get right to it. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and a lot of buzz is around this comedic skit
yes.
by comedian Druski
yes.
that is mocking megachurch pastors.
Right.
When you saw it, you are a pastor.
Yeah.
You have a big church.
Sure.
Were you offended?
Not at all. You know, I'll say this. I think Druski is genius in his presentation. But what's happening, what he did is not new. You know, Martin Lawrence has done parody of church. So many, in Living Color, I mean, all those skits that happen around church scenes, it's very common to us. I think the difference is because we're in a virtual age where you see social media so quickly, I think what happens on social media just becomes reality before it's reality. And I am not one that can call myself a megachurch pastor, even though I have a good membership. It's not my church. It's the Lord's church. Mm-hmm. And I think what he spoke to is a culture that is just not represented in our dynamic, in our context. Now, I do feel sorry for those who felt offended by this skit. I think what it does is it still gives us an opportunity to correct the perception. And if in any way you see something that looks familiar to your context, then it's a mirror.
Then fix it.
Yeah, exactly. If you see it and it looks familiar to what you do, fix it. If it doesn't, laugh at it. That's how I feel.
Okay, put me in the group chat. What are some of your fellow pastors saying when this came out?
Ha, ha, ha.
Everybody's laughing.
Yeah, everybody's laughing.
So nobody's upset or offended?
No. You know, social media outrage is so funny to me because I'm like, where are the people mad? Because they're not mad in my circle. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Of course, there are. I think the people who felt it was familiar to their context felt offended. But I don't roll with those guys. You know what I mean? Like, we just sang for Pastor Jamal Bryant the other day. And he, of course, has been in the midst of a lot of controversy. But at the same token, he's not coming in on a plane. You know what I mean? He's not rolling in on a Rolls Royce. He has his flash, but these are all things that he built not through the church's money.
It's funny you mentioned the plane part of it because I saw a comment. You know, I like to read the comments. I don't necessarily comment, but I read the comments. And in one of the comments, someone was saying sometimes pastors who have these private planes, it's because they're going from one church to another church to another church to preach. And the sermons are 2 hours apart.
Absolutely.
And they have to get to these churches in a short amount of time. And basically the person was saying that for every type of criticism that someone has for the flash and the glitz and the glamour for these pastors, they were giving a comeback for why it may be needed. I'm not saying I agree or not, but they had a lot of reasoning behind it. And they said they've raised $1 million to feed all these families and to help people who are dealing with, housing insecurity or foreclosure or eviction. And the list goes on and on and on.
So here's the truth. I know there's a pastor in Memphis, Tennessee. The whole coming in on a trapeze was a parody on something that he actually did in his church. But at the same token, this pastor feeds thousands of people a year. This pastor gives away so much money and cars that it's like you see the negativity, but you don't see the positivity. And that's what's unfortunate because we tend to highlight what we can get, what's clickbait. But we don't talk about all the good these people are doing. So I empathize for those who are doing the real work that seem to be scrutinized because of what people perceive as flash, because that's not really what it is.
And I think the good part about it is that we are having this conversation about the pastors and about church. People who don't go to church and have never asked me a single question about anything involving church are having conversations about what is happening in the congregation and behind the doors of the Lord's house, right? And so you're having a conversation and you're reaching people that you may not ever normally reach.
Druski is on a worldwide platform. People know him that don't go to church. So if the conversation sparks a visitation, then great. You know, if somebody will say, you know, let me see what kind of foolishness is happening here, and they come in and they get caught up and they get really blessed by what's happening in the church, then I think that even though I don't want to say the enemy, but even though people would have perceived it would have gone one way, it could really be used for the greater good.
And he did what so many other comedians do in terms of he took situations, but I feel like it's an exaggeration, right?
Of course.
It's an overstatement, right? And for folks who watch and listen to The Good Word, you all know that I grew up in Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church with Bishop Alfred A. Owens and co-pastor Susie C. Owens, and I sang in YCC, the youth concert choir, and we, you know, thought we were recording albums and we had choreography and it was all so wonderful. And there were elements in Druski's comedic skit that maybe, you know, but it wasn't to that extent. Right.
It was exaggerated for comedic value, right?
It was completely exaggerated.
You know, one of the best churches, and I try not to put those labels on churches, but one of the best churches I've ever visited in my life is right here in the DMV. Pastor John Jenkins, First Baptist Church of Glenarden. And they're great friends of ours, and he has what you would definitely call a mega church. He and his wife and his family are the kindest people in the world. We've been to their house. It's not, I mean, it's nice, of course, it should be for all that he does, but it's just not what the perception would be. And I celebrate those who have done great work, and there should be value attached to what they have because they've done this work for so long. This man has been pastoring for years. So I think it's unfair to label all mega church pastors with this negative connotation based on a skit.
What goes down at your church in terms of the choir versus the praise team versus the soloist when we're talking about praise and worship?
So we fortunately have both. We have choirs, we have praise teams. I guess they would consider me to be a soloist because I sing before I preach. I have to. And it's not because the house just needs it. I think it centers me. But I think it's important that choir music remains relevant and alive in our church context. I want to explain.
Please do. So really quick, let me jump in. If I visit your church, what will I see?
Wow. You probably will see a lot of jumping, a lot of running, and you would see people of all dynamics, age groups present and really engaged.
Okay, you were going to explain. We're listening.
So I want to explain what happened. In 2020, every church had big choirs. Not every church, but most churches did. When COVID hit, you were forced to minimize your presentation. And not only that, during COVID, there is this craze that happened called Maverick City. Maverick City is a praise team / group of singers that in the middle of COVID would come together and just sit around and sing. There would be a piano, and they would just sing. And
my daughter loves Maverick City.
So she's
9.
Wow, that's amazing. They gained popularity during a time where everyone couldn't be present. So because of that, there was an evolution of style in church to kind of emulate towards what was happening with Maverick City because it became so popular. However, Maverick City did have a choir, but the choir was just everybody who sat around and sang. When the churches came back together, not even before that, when we were like coming up with these virtual presentations, you couldn't have 30, 40 people in the room. You were limited to 10. 25 people in the building. So you couldn't have the whole choir come. It was dangerous. So At that point, people started to minimize. They started to black out the stage. They made everything a lot more conducive to what would happen online because that's where the congregation was. Now that we are back in the sanctuary, we're trying to, many churches, not us, but many churches are trying to figure out how to find that happy medium between what works well in the house, but what still also looks good online. I think that people tend to think that a lot of churches don't like choir music. I think it was not that. It was more so of evolution based on what was visibly acceptable. And I think that's important to note because I don't want people to think that choir music is no longer relevant.
It's very important. So I got to ask you, am I going to see the choir with the robes and the choreography, or what am I going to see? Am I going to see something that looks more like a praise team? To
this day, there are mega churches that have mega choirs. There's a church in Chicago right now that you go in that church today, you're going to see robes. In D.C.,
Are you talking about Pastor Hannah's church? I lived in Chicago for a little bit, and I went to Pastor Hannah's church there. Or Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Okay,
Pastor
we've had him on
church.
too.
Yes.
Shout out to those two men of God.
And great churches.
Yes, yes.
So they still have a more traditional style. So you'll see the churches with choir robes in more traditional churches. Pastor John Hannah, he has a choir, but they're going to be straight across the front, and they're going to be in jeans and sneakers.
Right.
So it really depends on the demographic that's the target. I think I had a conversation just yesterday with a worship leader, and she and her pastor were having an interesting conflict around what should be sang in church. And I told her to ask your pastor, who's your target audience? If you figure
Who do you want to be your target audience,
exactly.
Right? Because I was at a church a couple weeks ago, and the pastor said, people say we don't have young people at this church, but we do have young people. And then he pointed out that the young people were all sitting up top in the back. And so he said, for 2026, can y'all like sit down in the front?
Yeah, but that I think that the musical style reflects who's going to be in the front. If you think about it, if you sing upbeat praise and worship songs, the young people are coming down to the front. At John Hannah's church, there's no issue. As soon as you start singing their songs, they're coming to the front. In a traditional style church, they're going to be in the pews. They're going to be sitting there and clapping and enjoying themselves. So it's really depending on who your target audience is.
And then you also, I just want to bring up also, a few weeks ago, I had someone call me. They were looking for a church. And what they ran into in terms of the challenge is that the churches had the choirs, but they didn't have the traditional choir robes, or they had the praise teams, but they didn't have the traditional choir. So I guess I will wonder out loud and ask you, are we going to see that come back? Or is this how you think it's going to be moving forward?
I think you have to go where you see what you want. Because everything you're looking for exists somewhere. They may not be the most popular churches, but there are churches that still reflect that very traditional style.
And then even the style of music has evolved.
Yes.
We cannot have a conversation about the evolution of gospel music without your name in it.
Wow.
When you think about that, first let's talk about the pros, which is you are reaching people who may not otherwise be able to reach.
Sure.
When you think about that, what comes to mind?
I'm honored. That's what comes to mind. I'm honored that our music and our sound has been reflected in current culture. But here's the truth. People now would consider us to be traditional compared to what's current.
Compared to what's current and what's coming.
Yeah, so it's like there's always without evolution, you're stagnant. So I'm okay with the fact that music has evolved and it's a little bit more current past me. Literally, I'm in the traditional choir album of the year category. That's crazy to me.
Wow.
Because a few years ago we were
contemporary.
Yeah, so you have to embrace evolution. Otherwise, you're saying you want things to stay still, and nothing stays still if it's not dead. Let
me ask you, just from my own personal listening experience, there have been times, and I know I'm not alone, you're listening to a song and it's a gospel song. And it doesn't sound like a gospel song.
Sure.
What do you say to the critics who say that's not how it's supposed to be?
I would say they said the same thing about Precious Lord. Precious Lord was, people said that it was demonic because how dare you take that sound. It's not a hymn. At the time, those older songs, James Cleveland was considered to be a heretic at a point.
I wish I could sing right now. Can you give us a little bit? I'll sing with you if you start it.
Which
Precious Lord,
take my hand, lead me on.
Let me stand, I am tired.
Sing.
That's the song. So in case people are watching and they're like, what is Precious Lord?
Yes.
That's the song. And so there was some controversy when that initially came out, and people thought that it was a mockery of hymns.
Yes. Every evolution, there's going to be somebody who's targeted because they changed the sound. So I think if we feel that these current songs are too contemporary, then you have to understand that this happens every evolution. Kirk Franklin went through it. James Cleveland went through it. Every major, Israel Houghton, all these guys. When there's a new change coming in, the person that initiates that change has to deal with the feedback and the scrutiny of changing music as it is.
You have a choir that you lead. Talk about what that's been like from when y'all started to now.
Well, here's the amazing thing. We released a record just last year called The Live Reunion, and it celebrated 25 years in gospel music. We recorded our first record in 2000. We released it in the year 2000.
Wow.
And here we, 25 years later, 26 now, still releasing music, and we're so honored and grateful. 2000, it was easy to release music. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, it's as easy, but it's just different because there's no way to quantify how well you're doing. Mm-hmm. Then, hey, you sell 1,000 CDs, you're doing good. Mm-hmm. Now you have no idea. There's no way to quantify it. So we have now embraced the fact that if we impact people where our music is being sung in local churches and local praise teams, that's our measurement of whether we're really reaching people or not. And seeing that happen has been great because we see people on Instagram posting videos of them singing our songs, stuff like that. And believe it or not, it's still not old to me. I'm still humbled every time.
You mentioned if your music is being sung in churches and I guess on the radio even.
Yeah.
What's your take? And this just popped in my mind. What about these gospel clubs that are popping up across the country?
Yeah, it's amazing. We used to do them in churches. I remember Friday nights we would have light night,
right.
and they
First Fridays.
Yeah, First Friday.
At the church, though, for young people.
Yeah, so I think it's awesome that, the good news is being spread in different ways in different places.
Let's talk about your music that's out now.
Yes.
You have an album. Well, I say an album. You have new music that's out now. Tell us about that. The
Live Reunion, like I mentioned, is our celebration of 25 years in gospel music. It has people, and what we did was we brought people from the initial choir and we merged them with everybody who sings with us now.
Wow.
So it's like 60 people together singing, having a good time. It was an amazing weekend because we just got to love on each other and celebrate the times that we went through. So it was an awesome experience, and I think you can feel it in the record. It's available in stores now. It features Tamala Mann and so many other great artists. I think if you like gospel music, I would love for you to check it out.
And then you have some projects that you're working on right now at this moment.
Yes.
What can you share?
So right now we are recording a record. It's almost like a prayer and music record because it's kind of a mixture of what we do at church and what we do on the road. We are one of those choirs that is not just a performance choir. This is really our ministry. And so we wanted to merge it with how we conduct ourselves in the sanctuary with prayer and worship and, of course, what we do on the road. I'm really excited about it. I can't wait for everybody to hear it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I did sing in the choir growing up at Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church. Yeah. And it was not just your typical choir rehearsal.
Yes.
It was almost like a Bible study. I remember we would have to go one by one and read out a scripture, memorize. And I remember the first time when I came to choir rehearsal and they did this, I was terrified.
Absolutely.
And the person next to me, actually Jarmel Evans, who I grew up with, was like, he wept. And he told me that short scripture. Wow. And so for a while, that was my go-to scripture until I found and came to myself in terms of my relationship with God and was able to, have scriptures that I knew offhand. But it was very important, at Calvary at least, that we were saved and that that we knew the word.
Absolutely.
And so it's important that you're able to kind of mix that in the music that you're working on as well. All right, we have about a minute and a half left. You are a Grammy-nominated artist. Tell me about the song that led to that award, and did you ever in your life imagine that you would reach that level of success?
Never. It's a song called You Deserve It. We recorded it in 2016. The expectation was it would be a nice worship song to just add on. It was the last song we put on the record. We considered not putting it on, and we recorded it. It was an okay response in the room. For some reason, when we released it, it just had this worldwide response, and we're so grateful. It was nominated for a Grammy. We won 8 Stellars that year. It was just amazing. We won a Billboard Music Award for it. It was just crazy. And this year, what's amazing, we just found out we've been nominated for an NAACP
Image Award. Congratulations.
Thank you. So these awards just keep coming, and it's really because we've humbled ourselves and say, hey, this is what we have, and hopefully it'll reach somebody.
Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, pastor, JJ Hairston, thank you so much for joining us on The Good Word.
Thank you for having me.
We are on demand on Fox Local Sundays at 10 a.m. and on Fox Soul Sundays at 4 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm Tisha Lewis. Thank you for watching The Good Word. Until next time.